We go now to Ferguson, Missouri, to break up a fifth day of protests following the fatal police shooting of Michael Brown. The unarmed African-American 18-year-old was shot dead on Saturday. Police say Brown assaulted an officer and tried to reach for his weapon. But eyewitnesses say Brown was shot with his arms up as he tried to flee an officer's fire.
At times, the streets of Ferguson, Missouri look like a war zone this week as police patrol the streets in armored vehicles. News photographers captured a striking image earlier this week of a team of police officers dressed in military gear pointing their high-powered guns at a young African-American man who has his hands in the air. Yahoo News reports the Defense Logistics Agency has confirmed the Ferguson Police Department is part of a federal program in which the Pentagon distributes hundreds of millions of dollars of surplus military equipment from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan to civilian police forces across the country.
I want to address something that's been in the news over the last couple of days, and that's the situation in Ferguson, Missouri. I know that many Americans have been deeply disturbed by the images we've seen in the heartland of our country as police have clashed with people protesting. Today I'd like us all to take a step back and think about how we're going to be moving forward. This morning I received a thorough update on the situation from Attorney General Eric Holder, who's been following it and been in communication with his team. I've already tasked the Department of Justice and the FBI to independently investigate the death of Michael Brown, along with local officials on the ground. The Department of Justice is also consulting with local authorities about ways that they can maintain public safety without restricting the right of peaceful protest and while avoiding unnecessary escalation. I made clear to the Attorney General that we should do what is necessary to help determine exactly what happened and to see that justice is done. I also just spoke with Governor Jay Nixon of Missouri. I expressed my concern over the violent turn that events have taken on the ground and underscored that now's the time for all of us to reflect on what's happened and to find a way to come together going forward. He is going to be traveling to Ferguson. He is a good man and a fine governor, and I'm confident that working together he's going to be able to communicate his desire to make sure that justice is done and his desire to make sure that public safety is maintained in an appropriate way. Of course, it's important to remember how this started. We lost a young man, Michael Brown, in heartbreaking and tragic circumstances. He was 18 years old. His family will never hold Michael in their arms again. And when something like this happens, the local authorities, including the police, have a responsibility to be open and transparent about how they are investigating that death and how they are protecting the people in their communities. There is never an excuse for violence against police or for those who would use this tragedy as a cover for vandalism or looting. There's also no excuse for police to use excessive force against peaceful protests or to throw protesters in jail for lawfully exercising their First Amendment rights. And here in the United States of America, police should not be bullying or arresting journalists who are just trying to do their jobs and report to the American people on what they see on the ground. Put simply, we all need to hold ourselves to a high standard, particularly those of us in positions of authority. I know that emotions are raw right now in Ferguson, and there are certainly passionate differences about what has happened. There are going to be different accounts of how this tragedy occurred. There are going to be differences in terms of what needs to happen going forward. That's part of our democracy. But let's remember that we're all part of one American family. We are united in common values, and that includes belief in equality under the law, a basic respect for public order, and the right to peaceful public protest, a reverence for the dignity of every single man, woman, and child among us, and the need for accountability when it comes to our government. So now's the time for healing. Now's the time for peace and calm on the streets of Ferguson. Now is the time for an open and transparent process to see that justice is done. And I've asked that the Attorney General and the U.S. Attorney on the scene continue to work with local officials to move that process forward. They will be reporting to me in the coming days about what's being done to make sure that happens.
Now in Ferguson, Missouri, police have arrested at least 2 reporters, and one of MSNBC.com's reporters says tear gas has just been used. Joining me now by phone, Tremaine Lee, national reporter for MSNBC.com. Tremaine, what's going on there now?
Okay, about 10 minutes ago, we were all standing in front of the police line and the paramilitary vehicles, and someone must have thrown a plastic bottle. Something was thrown from the crowd. The police over the bullhorn said this is no longer a peaceful protest. You must disperse. Seconds later, fired tear gas into the crowd. And I was standing about 40 feet away from where the first canisters landed, and it burns your eyes and burns the breath in your lungs. People were running, screaming, and as we were running, it sounded like things were pinging off the walls of the gas station here. So I'm not sure if they were rubber bullets or what. And police have given their final warnings that if you do not disperse, you'll be arrested. But the crowd is standing strong. People are coming from out of the apartment complex and gathering in the street, standing. And so as the police line marches forward, you know, it's only a matter of minutes before something's going to go down.
Tremaine, is it clear to people there which way to retreat if they do want to follow that police order and disperse?
Well, it's not, because the line is right at the intersection, right ahead of the intersection of West Florissant and Canfield. And so a lot of the people live back there. My car is parked back there. So there's no way to disperse back home. They're telling people to leave and go to their residence. But the only problem is only half of the apartment complex is on this side. There are other homes on the other side of the street. And so it's not clear where people are supposed to go.
Tremaine, stay with us. Keep that phone line open. We're going to bring in Ryan Riley. He's one of the reporters who was arrested today. He's Huffington Post Justice reporter Ryan Riley. Ryan, joining us by phone also. Tell us what happened to you.
Sure. So essentially, I was at a McDonald's recharging my phone and computer battery, and just sort of working on uploading some things and filing some things when the police line started marching, when the SWAT team started marching further down the street, and I believe 3 officers came into the McDonald's and talked to the manager there, and then announced to everyone in the McDonald's that they couldn't guarantee their safety if they stayed. We said that was fine. They left, came back.
Ryan, who else was in the McDonald's at that time before the police came in?
There were customers. I think there were a couple of children at the time. There were definitely a few other customers there. People from the neighborhood. People who were just eating at the McDonald's.
And so, Ryan, there was nothing about the situation in the McDonald's before the police arrived that indicated there would be any reason not to be there, that there was anything unsafe about being there.
Oh, absolutely not. It was a completely calm situation. There was absolutely nothing happening in the McDonald's. The protests were going on, down the street. It's a sort of a suburban. It's more suburban actually than I expected, honestly, coming in here. And so, probably maybe a half mile, not even down the street, is where the actual protest was taking place. And the McDonald's was just completely calm and operating as normal until the officers came in and decided to clear everyone out. And I think the issue was that he arrested 2 reporters, but the issue why he maybe didn't like me too much was that I declined to provide identification, just simply because I was taking a photo of him, because he doesn't have justifiable reason to demand identification from me. So I declined to do that, and he moved on before they then came back and decided to clear the store. I think it seemed like they sort of forced the manager's hand in shutting down the store there. And then was told to pack up and was given a countdown. It sort of reminded me of some, the way some parents treat their children and giving them a countdown. And, I would think it was given like 30 seconds to basically get all my stuff up. And I was evidently not moving quickly enough, and perhaps maybe giving the officer a little bit of attitude as he was insisting that I pick up my things quickly and treating me, honestly, as like some sort of enemy combatant. It seemed like with someone who's simply operating it was working on their laptop in a McDonald's, and you come in, and because they're not moving quickly enough, and and you have a high-powered weapon, and they have a high-powered weapon, decides to arrest you. It was just such a such an overreach and so completely unnecessary and so antagonistic. And so I think that one of the things that you have to think of is, especially if I as a reporter, if we as reporters were being treated this way, and myself as a white man who was treated this way, I can't imagine how they treat members of the community, especially with the lack of diversity on the police force here, and so many issues. They're just really come into focus based on.
And Ryan, the other reporter who was arrested in that McDonald's Washington Post reporter did have his press credentials around his neck vividly displayed. Just hold it there, Ryan. We're going to go back to Tremaine Lee because there seems to be some movement there on the street. Tremaine. Do we have Tremaine Lee?
Yo, there's a fight. Oh,
We have someone on that phone. Okay, control room, figure out what's going on with Tremaine Lee and let me know. Ryan Riley, going back to you here, there seems to be some action on the street where Tremaine Lee is, and he can't join us back on the phone. What you're describing is a classic case of false arrest. I've heard both of the accounts of you and the Washington Post reporter who were arrested. And we can only hope that your journalistic enterprises, the Huffington Post and the Washington Post, take false arrest seriously as an inhibitor of press freedom, and that they bring false arrest lawsuits against these police for what they've done. I'm told Tremaine Lee can hear us and is connected to us now. Tremaine, can you hear me?
yes, I can hear you.
What's going on in your location now?
The police, a lot of police officers started marching forward. They started launching off cannons. I'm not sure you can hear in the background the booms and explosions. There's nothing but smoke in the air. People are running back. They're marching on. The people who are standing in the street. It's nothing but can't see anything in the street.
What do you think those noises are coming from?
They're stun grenades, and tear gas. The entire is starting to burn now. The entire street is filled with smoke. I can't see 20 yards ahead of me. It's silent. There was a chirping from these machines, and they started launching the stun grenades.
And from what you've seen about Tremaine, from what you've seen about the crowd's assembly there, is there any rationale you can think of about why they had to be moved and moved urgently this way?
Not this second time. They were standing about 200 yards away, just standing there. I'm at the last of the police warnings. About a minute or two later, the police started marching forward, and I'm not sure what provoked this. They were already about 200 yards behind. Now there seems to be some sort of flare in the middle of the street. There's a cloud of smoke billowing. It's a pretty rough situation. They're crouching down. You're about to hear more explosions.
And Tremaine, is there much light left in the area, or is it dark there now?
It's dark. You can't see anything. And it's made even worse by this cloud of gas that's kind of unfurling from the street.
And are people holding their ground against this, or are they beginning to disperse?
I can't even see. The only thing I can see is I see the officers in the paramilitary gear crouching down. There's still explosion in the background. I'm not sure if you can hear it. The only thing I can see cutting through the smoke is a police helicopter. I don't know if you heard that. They're still throwing off stun grenades. And it's kind of a lighting up there. You can kind of see the silhouette of all these officers. Some sitting on top of the armored vehicles with rifles. You can kind of see. Other than that, I can't see 20 yards ahead of me.
The crowd is peacefully standing with their hands in the air, yelling, "We are peaceful, hands up, don't shoot." Here comes the St. Louis County Police Department, continuing to advance their line. We have now pulled back a city block and a half. There it goes. They are now firing onto the crowd. Out! They are firing rubber bullets. We will They have now fired onto the crowd for a second time. Violence has erupted in the city of Ferguson. They are firing rubber bullets and smoke grenades. The air is thick. Now they are firing them into the neighborhoods into the back of people's houses.
Escalating with huge shows of force from both police and protesters. And now news crews are getting caught in the middle, hit with tear gas. All of this violence is over the shooting of an unarmed black teenager by a white police officer over the weekend. This video through our satellite feeds overnight. You can see the tear gas billowing into the air as heavily armed police officers patrolled the streets after a late-night face-off with protesters in which Molotov cocktails were thrown. Protesters were told they would be arrested if they didn't go home because they were not being peaceful. Meanwhile, two reporters, one from the Washington Post, the other from the Huffington Post, were arrested while working out of a McDonald's last night. They say police told them to stop recording before taking them into custody. They have since been released. And now to this video. This is actually a television news crew doing their jobs, suddenly interrupted with a tear gas canister. This crew from Al Jazeera America trying to cover the protests when they say an officer threw the canister right at them. You can see they had to run, leave their equipment behind to get away. Racial tension has reportedly been part of the Ferguson community for years. African Americans make up 2/3 of the population of the St. Louis suburb, but they account for 90% of stops by police, and the 53-member police force includes only 3 African Americans.
We just said hands up, don't shoot.
Is that all you were saying?
That's all we were saying. Hands up, don't shoot.
Were you in the front line up there?
In the front line, yes. And they just start shooting.
As far as, just people being mild, I mean, have people been fairly calm, as you said, compared to other nights?